Welcome to the Warriors of Light podcast, where we interview other warriors of light, people who are up to big things and making a positive impact in the world. Welcome to the Warriors of Light podcast. I am Myah Rose Rogers, and today I have a very special guest with me, Amanda Walker. Hello, Amanda.
Hello, I'm excited to join you.
Me too. Where are you joining us from today?
I am in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a native, so my heart is always here.
I love that. And as many of you know, I have two homes, one here in Utah and one in Phoenix. And in the winter months, I really enjoy Arizona. In the summer months, Utah's great. Sometimes
Yeah.
Utah is great in the winter too, because I get the snow, but it's nice because I can transition back and forth. So we're going to absorb and feel some of that sun coming our way from Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm just going to start today by reading to you a little bit about Amanda so you know why I invited her to be on the show today. So Amanda Walker is a master coach in life and business. I love that term, master. She is the creator of the Best Damn Coach podcast and program. So if you like this podcast, you'll definitely have to check hers out. Amanda has been featured in Forbes, Today Online, Catalyst Athletics, and her signature approach involves helping women create sustainable habits and develop a true love for themselves. Her featured BDC method helps coaches increase coaching mastery and build the skill of growing a thriving business. So here's a few things that Amanda wants you to know about her. Ready? Number one, she's part science and part soul. I love that. She loves pickles and likes to drink the juice. So I can't say that I relate to that, but mine's more of a chocolate fetish. She believes that Mary Poppins is her soul sisters because she has it all right. And she loves a good juicy burger with a side of sweet potato fries. We're going to have to go out to burgers next time we meet. And she says, give me a good playlist on Spotify and a frothy coffee, and I'm one happy girl. So Amanda, welcome to the show today. And I like to begin just by offering everybody that's listening a $10,000 takeaway. Before we get into your story or anything else, what's one thing that if they got anything else out of this show would be worth $10,000 or more? What's your $10,000 takeaway?
Yeah, I feel like I've learned so many things over the years, but I think the one that I see that's impacted my journey the most, and also I'm just constantly coaching clients on and reframing around, is that when you align your expectations with reality, success is going to come your way so much faster. And what I mean by that, I have a science background, so I think a lot in graphs and infographics and data. But if we could imagine you went back to science class as whatever, sophomore in high school, and we were to, have an X and Y axis. When we set out to create transformation in our life, whether it's to build a business, which I would categorize as transformation, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's a fitness transformation, which is where kind of my journey in business began, we often are like, okay, I'm going to go out and do this thing, and it's going to be this perfectly kind of upward trending positive correlation. In other words, when I put in a week's worth of effort, I should see tangibly a week's worth of product or result. You and I both know. And I think consciously, we all know that the journey, though, ends up never looking like that, right? Often we start something and we get a little bit of momentum, and then life happens, right? And obstacles come in our way and learnings come. And the reality of that slope is very windy, right? It's very minimal progress. And I call the gap, if we were to really be graphing this, we would see there's this giant gap in between our expectations and reality. And I call that the land of the lost. Because I do think that specifically in entrepreneurship, a lot of entrepreneurs hang out here because what they think should happen is not happening. And so they tell themselves stories like, this isn't working, I'm not working hard enough. I must be doing something wrong. My messaging's off, like all these possible stories specifically, or in health and fitness that might sound very similar. And so what they keep doing is starting over. They quit and they go back and they're like, I'm going to try a different way. I'm going to try this method and strategy because this person said it works for them. I'm going to try this. And so much of their career as an entrepreneur, those that I would say aren't completely, haven't hit the mark yet, they're spent in just starting over. And what they don't realize is that it's kind of like the gold miner looking for gold. If you've ever seen that picture, and it's like the gold miners digging through coal or something, coal miner, and it's digging through coal, and what he doesn't see, like right on the other side of like two more shovel strokes, is like gold. And that's what I call the corner of possibility. And so many times in our journey, we keep starting over when right in front of us, like the magic was about to unfold. And beyond that is exponential growth and possibility.
Yes. Wow.
So that's really where I think that that is like really question the stories that you're telling yourself and lean on data instead of emotion to really begin to like pluck that apart and get really curious about it.
The first thing that comes to my mind when you say that, well, a couple of things came to my mind. One is I used to be a personal trainer. And like every single year, I would manage this small gym. This was years ago. I would see this influx of people coming in right around January, right? And they'd have all these expectations like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds this month. So I look fantastic for my sister's wedding. Or I'm gonna gain X amount of muscle mass and be a bodybuilder within 2 months. And I'm gonna work out like 5 hours a day. And a couple of things happened. Number one was if they had unrealistic expectations, they would get very disappointed. Like losing 30 pounds in a month is pretty unrealistic. And so what would happen is when that didn't happen in a month, I wouldn't see them at the gym again. They'd stop coming by the 1st of February, and I wouldn't see them again till the next January when they'd come in with this other like unrealistic goal, right? So they had the unrealistic goal, or they would expect to push themselves harder than they actually was reasonable or that they could do it. Like working out 5 hours a day is not reasonable. It's not something that's sustainable. But what I did see was people that came to the gym with manageable expectations, like, okay, I'm going to work out 3 times a week for 30 minutes to start with, and my goal is to lose a couple of pounds a week, and I'm going to start eating right. And the people that had those expectations and kept going, I see that picture of the coal miner, they hit the gold. They hit the losing the 30 pounds. Maybe it wasn't in a month, but they hit that and they were happy and it was more sustainable. I also think about this in business so much. I was just talking to a client of mine today, and they launched a new program, and there were like, I don't know, 20 people on, and only 4 people bought the new program. And they're like, I don't even know if I should do this new program anymore. Only 4 people got the new program. And I'm like, hey, let's celebrate that those 4 people got it, and let's look at the data. If every time you launch and you have 20 people and you get 4 people, eventually you're going to have your goal of 40 people in the program. Let's just do it 10 more times. So I love that. I think that's a huge takeaway. Where has this shown up for you in your life? How did you learn that lesson, or how did you learn to be able to manage your expectations?
Yeah, and I think what it for me boils down to is the delayed gratification muscle that we have to build in our life. The resiliency is like when we see this, and I see this, one of the most obvious ways that this happens, I think, naturally for us, and we don't realize is if any of you that are listeners are parents, is we think about, I think about how much energy and investment I'm putting into my children as they grow. My kids are currently 13 and 11, so that they go out and become successful in whatever way they define success, productive citizens in the world. And I am like investing, 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 and I have no fruits of that labor until they are adults, right? I don't get to see tangibly. Yes, I see these little wins along the way that are like, oh gosh, okay, yes, I'm doing the right thing, right? And I think that this transfers over into other elements. So I see it in parenting as an opportunity, which comes very natural for me, and the trust and is right in front of your face. Where I think it comes less is some of those things that aren't necessarily our zone of genius. And for me, at one point, similar to you, that started with my own, body transformation. I found myself in a body like 75 pounds heavier than I was, and than I am right now, and I've maintained that for 10 plus years. And so when I was able to create that the reasonable expectations and be able to like keep my eye on my towards motivational strategy, like what I want in the future, I was able to have such greater success than those unrealistic expectations. And now, of course, I see it in my business. I know where I want to go, and I keep my eye on the prize, and I set reasonable expectations, claim those small wins, and now I get to see how that unfolds consistently inside my client roster as well. And it's one of the most common, struggles that I feel like I coach honestly anyone, no matter what the container is.
This is interesting. What's coming to my mind right now. I recently read this book called The Molecule of More. Have you heard of it before?
No, I haven't.
really fascinating book, and it talks about the difference of these dopamine hits versus like serotonin or these happiness chemicals that are a little bit longer lasting. And really, this book addressed that so often in our society, and I think in our lives and in our business and in our parenting, our health, all these things, we're looking for that immediate dopamine hit. You know, that how many likes am I getting on Facebook? How many pounds am I losing? How many clients am I getting? And if we don't get that immediate dopamine hit, we try and turn somewhere else to get it. But what this book brings up that's so fascinating is that dopamine actually is like the chemical of addiction, right? We get addicted to these dopamine hits, but it's not the long lasting happiness chemicals like serotonin brings long lasting like happiness. So, for example, in a relationship, when you're first dating somebody, you get this dopamine hit. Everything's new and exciting and fantastic and fun. And if you're expecting for that level of dopamine to last throughout your relationship, you'll be disappointed. And that's why people in their relationship are going, okay, things don't feel as exciting as they did in the beginning. But if
Exactly.
you learn to recognize the difference between dopamine and serotonin is what we're really looking for. Like everybody in a relationship's looking for that connectedness and that long term partner and that happiness and that growth that they experience together. And that doesn't come through the dopamine. I think it can be the same in our business and life. And would love to hear your thoughts on this, where sometimes we're looking for that dopamine hit, like that immediate, we think in our mind, we're going to launch a program and immediately get 1,000 new clients in and $1 million in the bank. That's great if that happens. But even if it does, are you able to maintain that happiness? Are you able to have a sustainability? And really, what we're looking for is the long term happiness factor. So, what are your thoughts on that when it comes to creating a business? I know you're a business and life coach. So how does that play in?
I mean, one of my mentors, James Wedmore, if you've never heard, I'm sure you're familiar, but he always says, like, business should be boring. Like, if you're coming into your business specifically wanting it to be the thing that fills up your cup and brings you excitement, he's like, find a freaking hobby. Because really, the true repetition or the true success in business is like creating something and then rinsing and repeating, right? And going, okay, what's working and what's not, and continuing to make it better and better and better. But to your point, I think that often we're very quick to judge one time out of the gate and we're like, okay, this is not successful, I'm gonna try something different. Or this is successful, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like, this is gonna keep going, keep going, and keep going. And I find that even with weight loss, as my business began, right, most of my work was in the health and nutrition space. And I would work with women, they would lose, a great deal of weight. And they were like so excited about it. But truth is, like, that's just like a very micro piece to the puzzle. True results are where are you a year from now, right? This is why we're in this, for me, this cultural issue when it comes to diet and weight loss is because we're really measuring results in the short term. And I think this is also honestly a problem and an ethical issue I have with the coaching industry, because the metrics are similar, like money. We just want to know, oh, if this person says online that they've made X amount of dollars, then that must be legit, right? Truth is, there's so much more going on to the story. And so I think it takes us inside, and knowing where your values align to be able to choose the right mentor, the right situation, the right community to be a part of that values, that sustainable practices, and that the true form of success, from my opinion, is A, following your heart, but B, like, where are you going to be in 5 years from now?
Yeah, totally. I get that. During my programs, I teach there's these four archetypes of the divine feminine, and one of them is the queen, and that's like the long term vision. Do you know where you want to be a year or 5 years from now? And one of the things that you mentioned that really stood out to me is this idea of metrics, or being able to measure things, or knowing the statistics on getting things to work. One of my biggest pet peeves with the transformational industry is like this feeling of like, I can do and I can achieve anything, and lightning's going to strike. And if I just believe hard enough, like I'm going to
All
make it
gonna
and
happen.
everything's going to fall into place. And I think that plays into the mindset of trying new things over and over again, because everybody's looking for like, what's the one thing that's going to give me the immediate results. But the truth is, and this is where I'd love to pick your brain about the science part of it, right? Because science does play such a huge role. Statistics, metrics play such a huge role in being able in us being able to recreate our results or to see things and taking the emotion out of it. I do believe, I just want to say, I do believe that there is a place for emotion. Like, I do believe that you are radiating a frequency. And if you're radiating positivity and belief in yourself and you have that good attitude, like all of that's really important. But could you address what is the importance of the metrics, of the statistics, of the science, and being able to achieve success both in business and in life?
Yeah, I'll tell a story I think that exemplifies this really well. I have a new client. I had a new client. She was a new client months and months ago or last year, and she has been a collegiate athlete, and she wanted to coach young teenage girls on how to be recruited to play college sports. And so she came to me asking me to help her, design her coaching practice and like start from scratch, zero experience, right? And so I'm such a proponent of like working with somebody's strengths. So teaching is her strength. So we want to put her in a position to teach on a webinar. So she hosts her first webinar and I get so excited, like, tell me the breakdown. How did it go? And I use Voxer to support my one-to-one clients. But if, as I'm listening, right, you can just tell she's like the tone out, you can tell her tone, which indicates her physiology is like, well, it just didn't go. Like, it was okay. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me like how many people showed up? Let's go over how many people signed up, showed up, purchased. Those are the three things that I want to know, right? Those are numbers and those are metrics.
Wait,
And
let's
so,
say that one more time because I think this is worth writing down for everybody out there who has a business. When you're
yeah,
doing something, how many people signed up? What was the second one?
showed up
Showed up and
and purchased.
okay, got it.
And that purchase doesn't even have to be live. Like there's opportunities for post webinar purchasing, right? And follow up and nurturing. But those are the three things that ultimately I want to know with my clients. And I want to teach them this from the beginning because nobody taught me this, right? I had to learn this after years of falling on my face because my emotions left me crying on the floor, thinking I didn't do something well, when in fact, when I looked at the metrics, I did. So it turned out, and I don't remember the numbers, they're not right in front of me, but she ended up having something like 25 people sign up for her first workshop, which I don't know about you, but my first workshop, I think I had two, and one was my mom.
Yeah.
Right? It was very small. And then she ended up having something like 18 show up live. So just in general, if you're wondering like what are percentages, and I'm just using averages, and of course those have changed over time, but in general, if you have 25 to 35% show up rate, like that's pretty dang good, right? So already she's exceeding that metric. And then live on the webinar, before she even got past like into a nurture sequence or anything like that, where she might like organically reach out and have more conversations, which is something again that I teach to my clients. I think, and I'm going to do the math right now because I don't know it offhand. I think I said she's had about 18 people attend, and then she had 3 purchases live. And so if we look at that, the metrics were like something between, I think that's in my brain, 15 to 20-ish% conversion.
Hmm.
Average is like 3 to 5%. So she tripled that, right? And so this is a great example of emotion. Her perception was based on an expectation and a feeling she felt, then versus looking at the data. And then we were able to pull back and celebrate. And I was like, okay, we know you convert at like 16%. So how do we, to your point, rinse and repeat, right? How do we keep doing this? And I think that is where it's important to pull the emotion out and let's look at the data and own this place of neutrality and just compare it against what would be maybe averages. But then what that really did is it established her averages and her norms. It's kind of like if you went to the doctor and you got your blood drawn trying to get results, one time doesn't really tell us much. We want to like keep rechecking that over periods of time to see what goes up, what comes down, and establishing a baseline for her. And I think these are often the opportunities for growth and mentorship that we miss out on if we don't have somebody saying like, hey, pump the brakes. Let's look at the numbers before we get too emotionally caught up.
Yeah, well, and this is the thing, I think in business, emotions can be our best friends or our worst enemies, right? And I
Mhm.
love how you said take the emotions out of it. You know, what blows my mind is how many people that I talk to, clients, strategy sessions that I do, and I'll say, well, how much money do you want to make per month? And people aren't even clear on how much money they want to make, or, what's your closing rate when you have a class, when you do a workshop, what's the show up rate? What's the closing rate? And what in just a few minutes people can understand is if they have a number, what's your goal number of what you want to make? If you have the understanding of how many people need to sign up for something to get X amount of people to show up for something, to get X amount of people to buy, to make X amount of money, it's all very simple formula. And then your goal is like, how can I get, X amount of qualified clients to my next workshop or to my next online event or to my next in person event because you know the numbers. And then it takes the guesswork out of it, and it takes that feeling, that icky feeling of like, oh, I didn't succeed. You kind of are able to estimate or guesstimate what your numbers are going to be based on that. So now you have clear goals for your mind and your brain to work towards. I love that.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
So, Amanda, one thing that I would love to know from you is what have been some of your biggest growth opportunities? I mean, what have been those dark nights of the soul for you, or those times when you felt like you couldn't move forward? And what did you do to be able to overcome those?
Yeah. You know, immediately what comes to mind is honestly entrepreneurship as a whole. It was kind of the journey of personal development I just never knew that I needed, right? Because it totally delivers all your insecurities on a silver platter, right? Any limiting belief for me like just surfaced as soon as I decided I'm going to put myself out into the world so everybody can see me fail, right? If that's like really the case. But an area that has been ample growth is when I was starting my business. I had an amazing mentor who brought me on, and she brought on another person to my surprise at the same time. And there was not a lot of transparency about that. And she happened to be a friend. And I found myself really deeply falling into um, this very competitive. I've been an athlete my whole life. And I've been fighting for the starting position, the starting lineup, the top spot my entire life. And so much of my belief system I was able to realize and have since been working on is like rising tides don't really lift all ships. Like that's mine. I'm going to go out and get it. And so simultaneously here we're building businesses next to each other. And I literally found myself on the floor in my kitchen crying one day to my husband because it was to the point where I would like, which is so triggered if I saw anything, on social media about her, or happened to run, into her, or somebody would mention, and I could feel inside this anger and this jealousy, and it dismantled me because I didn't like the way I was feeling, and truthfully, that was a catalyst for me investing in my first coach because I was like, I know that I can't go through the rest of my business feeling this way. It's interesting. I've never really talked about this on a podcast, but I'm supposed to today. Um, and I remember just so deeply feeling mortified and jealous. And it was my first coach who really helped me do mirror work and was like, let's figure out like what is this bringing up inside of you? And it was that I wanted to be what she was that I didn't have, right? She had this amazing ability to show up. She was unapologetically being herself. I was still over here, like, not posting on social media because I was like, I don't want to bother people. I
Mhm.
don't want to, like, I was playing extremely small in my life and she wasn't. And that was a pivotal moment in my life when I could finally start understanding that entrepreneurship is really about personal growth. I don't know personally now how entrepreneurs survive and create lasting businesses who aren't developing themselves and hiring somebody or working with somebody or doing the work on themselves to grow in a quote unquote, I think, spiritual way. Because it's made me a better mother, it's made me a better wife. Everything about my life has changed by saying yes to starting a business. And it started with that realization that nothing would change if I didn't hold a mirror and start to understand like where the judgment was truthfully coming from. And so, I got to the place where I called her eventually on the phone and I thanked her and I was like, thank you for like giving me this gift of seeing what's really coming up for me. And that's been the catalyst and why I'm so passionate about bringing women together and being able to pull that place aside and to, I'm now the girl that can walk by somebody, a stranger, and be like, wow, you just are radiating, right? The old me 15 years ago, 20 years ago would have been like judging the heck out of her.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's one big thing that comes up for me.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I've noticed that as well in my own evolution in my own business, and again through mentorship and coaching, just realizing that every time I'm judging somebody else, I'm really judging something inside of me. There's this great book called Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. I don't know if you've heard of that or read that. That's another phenomenal book at like looking at why we feel triggered by things or why people trigger us. And the other thing too, especially for women in business, if you think about it, like millennia, women have been required to or have the pressure to turn their backs on each other or to compete in a way that tore other women down so that they could survive. And it's really beautiful that we're actually in a society now that's evolved to the point where we can actually help lift each other up. I was listening to something the other day. I thought this was fascinating. The original meaning of competition was to help each other grow. Clear back when they did the Olympics in ancient societies, when they had these athletic competitions, the whole purpose was to gather together the best athletes so they could push each other into greater growth. And I think that we've seen that. What is it, that 1 minute mile or whatever, I think is what it's called,
Yeah,
where once one person does that and succeeds, then all of a sudden you're affecting other people, and people all over the world start doing that. And I think as women, as we step more into embracing our business and collaborating and looking at where in us we're feeling the insecurities, that actually inspires other women to do the same. So I'm really glad that you were able to do that for yourself, and you were able to look yourself. And that's a great reminder for anybody that's listening. If you're feeling insecure or that judgment or that competition, it's, look in the mirror. And I love your point of hire somebody. My dear friend Les Brown says it's hard to see the picture when you're inside the frame. Like
yeah,
sometimes you just can't see. And we've been programmed. I mean, from the time we were born till the time we were 7 years old, we are in a constant state of theta, which is this hypnosis state, right? This is when we get all of our software and hardware programming, all of our
yep,
beliefs based on things that people are telling us or the ways that we perceive situations or stories. And some of them are so deeply ingrained with us, they're so deeply part of us that we don't even see it. We don't even know it because we don't know anything different. And having someone point that out to us and say, hey, let's step back, let's look at this, let's see what's going on, and show that there's a new way to reprogram our systems, our brains, our minds, our businesses, is a really powerful. So
yeah.
thanks for that reminder. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I would love for you to share some other tangible tips with people that are listening, in particular, women that want to balance their life and their business. What are some things, some tangible tips that people can start doing today, right now, that are going to help them in their business and in their life to create that greater balance, success, and growth?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's very easy to be so results oriented on the metric, right? That the money that we're going to make in business specifically. And I really look at it very holistically. So tangibly, my answer to most things, to build something sustainable and create balance, is always going to be to focus on self first. And we can say that, the oxygen mask, wear it first. And I think that's nice and great on paper. And it's like, does that really, like, is that really tangible? And I think that the most important thing we can do is move our bodies. So that's always going to be my favorite thing to just say, like, tangibly, if you want to be more productive, you want to be more confident, you want to create greater balance, you want to feel better about your life, then move your energy along and find some outlet that works for you, whether that's yoga, walking, CrossFit, running. My roots will always be in this element of, like, without our health, we have nothing. And we feel so good, right? Because we do get that little dopamine release, but it's really also the long term of knowing that that is a place for us to go and to be with ourselves and, just self priority all the time. And I always encourage people to, like, tangibly, that means front loading it. Like, don't tell yourself the story that you're going to do it later. Like,
Mhm.
find space and create the space for just that one thing. um, gosh, other tangible ways to create balance.
Well,
Um,
I wanna address this one for just a moment, and that is that I had this experience recently. This just reminded me. Maybe this story will inspire somebody else. But I'd like to say I'm a recovered people pleaser, but I think I'm still a work in progress.
Sure.
So I recently recognized areas of my life in which I was sacrificing things that made me happy or brought me balance because I loved seeing other people be happy, like my husband or my clients or my children. And um, I really had to sit with that. And what I committed to was on Sundays, which is my connection to Source Day, taking a couple hours in the morning and just really doing what my soul feels called to do, what's going to help me connect, have a greater connection with myself and Source. And we were on vacation just this last weekend for spring break with our kids, and it was Sunday morning. And my husband had some big plans. He wanted to get up early and go do stuff. And my whole soul was like, oh my gosh, like I really just need a couple hours. And I travel so much that I've just decided like I've got to just make this my standard. And I was really proud because the old me would have been like, all right, let's just go, let's just do it. And then I would have felt burnout by the end of the day. And then I would have felt resentful. And then I would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so stressed. So instead, I said, hey, why don't you go with the kids, go do the fun stuff with the side by side. They're going to have a great time. I'm going to stay here for a couple hours and I'll meet you at lunch. And I just got to meditate. I exercised. I practiced intuitive shopping. I found this little shop in the city we were in and found this epic pair of jeans. I've been looking for a good pair of jeans that fit me for like months. I got, donuts for the kids to surprise them. And I felt so good. And because I did that, I was able to show up in the afternoon as the best version of me and happy and alive. And, my husband and the kids that were with us commented, like, wow, you just really seem happy. And what I realized was that a practice that I would have previously thought was selfish or I would have delayed. I would have thought, well, I could just do this tomorrow or I'll
mhm,
just do it
mhm.
later tonight. By prioritizing and putting that first in my life, I really was filling my bucket and I was able to show up as the best version of me. So, I don't know, maybe that'll inspire somebody on here that's thinking that they want to delay something. But I love that tangible tip. Really making these practices and putting them first in our life does keep us in balance so we can show up as our best selves.
Yeah. I think my other piece of feedback around the balance piece is I think that we can all identify an area that in our lives we want to grow, yet we resist growth in, right?
Mm.
Because it feels highly I don't know, because of fear, because of doubt. So, for example, I'll use mine is for years I resisted just kind of working through this whole notion of like really showing up as the expert that I am, right? And being seen. And so, a big area of my life that I wanted, yet I resisted was visibility and pitch work,
Mm.
like writing for publications, being on podcasts. And I kept saying like, okay, I'm gonna do it Friday. Like on Friday, I'm gonna spend a couple hours doing it, right? And then somehow, of course, it would get dusted under the rug. And then finally, I was like, okay, I got to move it to Mondays. And then inevitably, stuff would happen Mondays, and I'm like, oh, it's not really a priority, right? And this pattern
I can so
continued.
relate to what you're saying.
Okay, you
Yes.
get me, right? Until then, like the next level of that became like I asked one of my girlfriends, who's also a business owner, like, will you hop on Zoom with me for an hour on Mondays and like just make me show up and help me do this work? Like this is what I teach and preach, and yet here I am like also having this. So none of us are exempt for this, by the way. It could be your workout, it could be healthy meal prep, it could be hard
For me,
conversation.
it's like, taxes and finances. I'm like, "Oh, I'll
Finances.
do it tomorrow. It's okay. I'll wait. It's okay. Next week when I have more space, then I'll really focus on it." Yeah.
Yeah, and it could be that just even consistently, like the consistent money showing up with your money in your business. And so what I have adopted over the years for myself, but is highly impactful for my clients is something I call the power hour. And it's 1 hour of your day. It's how I start my day. And the hour can shift. You can design it as you want. For me, currently, it's divided into two 15-minute blocks and a 30-minute block. So my first 15 minutes is, I'm just like rolling out of bed. I set myself up in my office with my red light. Like that is very soothing for me. And the first 15 minutes is spent journaling, meditation, prayer kind of combo. And then the next 15 minutes is reading whatever book I'm currently. And then the next 30 minutes is pitch work. And I come to that every day. And my goal is I don't finish that. So sometimes it does trickle over depending on the schedule of my kids or whatever. And what allows is I don't leave the that work until I've really engaged with 2 pitches, whether that's podcasts or speaking or whatever the case is. And I show up consistently. But my point in offering this is that I set the timer and I just give myself, instead of it outcome based necessarily, it's time based. And I make a commitment to myself that I'm going to follow through. And then going back to our metrics conversation, I do actually track it. Like I have personal KPIs in my, software that I keep so that I can see that I'm showing up to do the thing.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, like for me, massive action is the thing that's going to move the needle for us. And yet we do resist it so much. And so that's my other tangible is like set the timer, recognize that you're resisting it, and just show up and do it in tiny baby amounts because those really do stack up.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that. I mentioned in the past, mine has been like the taxes and finances. And finally, over the past few weeks, I'm like, I don't care. I'm going on a date with my finances and my taxes for 1 hour or more every week. And I've been doing that. I've been setting the timer and I'm like, just for now. And it actually feels really, really good. Feels
Yeah.
good. It's like when you put stuff off, for me, it just feels like this weight that's pushing down on me or that I'm dragging behind me. Like it's always in the back of my head thinking, oh, I should have spent time on this. I should be doing this. I should be, but I'm going to do it later. And my energy, my whole energy field has felt so much lighter. I'm going to start using that phrase, my power hour.
Yes.
And I love the idea of just looking at what have you been resisting and just setting a timer. It's like 1 hour, 1 hour of that's like one Netflix show or, one, a couple of sessions browsing social media, like 1 hour, commit to this and see how much more powerful and better you feel. So great tips, Amanda. I love this so much. It's just been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I would really love for you to share information with anybody who's listening that's felt drawn towards what you had to say, that wants to find out more about you, your materials. I know you have a podcast and some other things out there. Where can people find out more about you?
Sure. I mean, definitely come listen to the podcast, Best Damn Coach. We talk about self coaching, life, business, and of course, just the art of coaching. I'm on Instagram. If there's social people that love the socials, that's the best place for me to connect with me. A couple just opportunities to get more value would be I do host a weekly, just on the note of action, I host a weekly networking community called Do the Damn Thing. And actually, it's networking and it's accountability. And we actually set the timer as a community. We go on mute and we take action on areas we're resisting, like to be in each other's energy. So if you're interested in joining the community, meeting other cool people, you can sign up for that at amanda-walker.com/networking. And if any of you are coaches out there and you're struggling to create consistent clients in your roster, and you're feeling like you're just kind of being drowned out by a busy industry and you want to stand out, I do have a webinar I would highly encourage you to go take a listen and watch to. And you can find that at amanda-walker/masterclass. And so I'll use some of my tips and strategies to stand out without spending lots of money on marketing.
Oh, very valuable. Thank you so much for those valuable offerings. And as we wrap up today, if there's one thing that you want the people that are listening to take away or to really hear from this podcast, what would that be? What's your final message?
And it kind of goes full circle to how we started, and that is just keep going and really question the thoughts in your mind, and realize that they are often thoughts and not facts, and be able to, see them from an objective, neutral place, and really use data to drive how you want to continue to cultivate results. And little tiny wins every day get you there. I'm an example of that, and so are my clients. So if I can just like send that love to everyone, is just keep going.
Thank you so much, Amanda. What a great podcast today. I'm Allison Myah Rose Rogers, and stay tuned for more Warriors of Light podcasts where we interview people that are making a huge impact in the world. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.